This week on the Creation Today show.
Well, you need to care about the lost. And if you have no concern for others to be saved, Spurgeon said, well, then you're not saved yourself. When you got saved, whoever you are, was it some strong apologetical question that was holding you back? I dare to say that you were just in your sin. You were in darkness. You were darkness. You loved darkness. And then one time, God invaded your time and space, and he saved you for reasons known only to him.
Welcome to the Creation Today show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your host, Eric Hovind, affirms the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
Have you ever found yourself in a conversation about faith only to feel stumped by a tough question or an unexpected argument? Or maybe you've been in a conversation where emotions were running high, and when that happens, logic seems to get completely lost, and you're left wondering, how do I respond in a way that honors God and points people to the truth? Well, today you guys are in for a treat. In this episode of the Creation Today show, we're going to dive deep into the art of answering every argument with clarity, with confidence, and with compassion. I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who has mastered this very skill. So if you're ever struggling to find the right words in a challenging discussion, or wondering how to effectively engage people who disagree with you, this episode is for you. So get ready to take some notes, guys. You're going to be equipped, encouraged, and inspired to stand firm in your faith. Hey, if you're new to the Creation Today show, we are on a mission to disciple the world one person at a time. Our goal is to take people's stumbling blocks and turn those into stepping stones so that everyone can see Jesus as both the creator and the redeemer of mankind. If you want to help our mission, you can become a partner at creationtoday.org/partner. Now, you guys are truly going to love my guest. He has spent years studying, engaging in meaningful conversations and dialogues with skeptics and seekers and believers alike. His insights are incredibly practical, they're biblical, and they're really easy to apply. So whether you're in a casual conversation or a full-blown debate, whether you're in a casual conversation or a full-blown debate, today he's going to share with us some strategies to handle everything from emotional reactions to logical fallacies, all while keeping the focus on what's most important, and that is the sharing of the gospel. He's the Senior Vice President of Living Waters and the Dean of their online school of biblical evangelism. With over 25,000 students, he's a popular speaker at conferences and universities. He also co-hosts the Way of the Master podcast, where they equip Christians in evangelism and apologetics. He's a movie producer of well-known films like 180, Evolution versus God, and What Is It?, which is an incredible documentary on the subject of abortion. If you haven't watched it, you got to see it. He and his wife, Laura, have homeschooled their 5 children. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Mark Spence. Mark, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Well, it's a joy to be here. Boy, after listening to that, I can't wait to hear myself speak. I mean, you almost feel like I'm the second coming. Listen, I'm saved by grace, brother.
I have been blessed to know you for more than 20 years now, and all of that is true. It's all completely accurate. I know I am encouraged every time I get to have a conversation with you. It is a blessing. So I know people watching this are going to be encouraged, no doubt about it.
Nice. Well, I have no real idea what direction we're going to head with that, but you gave me a sort of an idea with what you shared, so excited.
Well, I'm kind of curious where you see this is your full-time job, is to go and share the gospel. I thought I'd start by asking, how's the church doing? How are we doing at evangelism? I mean, that's your job, to equip people. You're the VP of this whole thing, so how's the church
that's a
doing?
good question. In fact, I like the way you worded that as well. You didn't say, how are we doing at apologetics? Because a lot of times when people think of evangelism, they think of apologetics. They think of, well, what if somebody asks me a question and I don't have an answer for that? I'm not as smart as Eric Hovind is or as Frank Turek is, and therefore I cannot engage with my next door neighbor or college students at the local campus. So evangelism, right? It's just love in action. It's opening up our mouths as we ought to engage in a conversation with someone who, by and large, typically is not interested in talking about spiritual matters. So let's separate the apologetics from evangelism, which is just simply telling people about Jesus and how he can set people free. Love the way you worded that.
Nice. Well, how's the church doing in the evangelism side? I love the apologetic side. I love making the arguments. I know you have that as well, and have a love for that. On that evangelism side, how's the
I
church
might have a
doing?
skewed view on that because I think everybody around me shares the gospel, and I don't think a lot of people can share that and say that same thing. I think it was Bill Bright who said less than 2% of the church actively shares the gospel with people. Right. Well, I'm with Ray Comfort, who goes out twice a day to the local college campus to share the gospel with people. On Saturdays, he goes down to the beach, and on Sunday, he goes to a local park. Right. So this is my sphere of influence. And the guys that I'm around that I rub elbows with are much in the same way, that it's not necessarily a Friday night event. And that is a great thing to do. But it's as they go, they realize they are going to grow. They're not trying to get all of the answers to all of the questions that are going to be heading their way. They share the gospel as they go to the supermarket or as they go to the restaurant. They pay for the food of the person behind them, and they hand a gospel tract to the person who's taking the order, and then they hand them a gospel tract and say, can you give it to the guy behind me? So that's kind of the world that I'm in, and it's I think a lot different than the average Christian. When I travel and I speak in universities, or when I travel and I speak at different church events, I know that's not necessarily the case, but I think it should be the case, right? I mean, here we are in the earlier part of 2025, and let's just kind of make it our aim that as I go out, I'm not just going to get a boba or some sushi or get a new shirt. I'm going out to share the gospel, which means I could be placing gospel tracts in coat pockets or in cases of beer, or I can put them at the laundromat on top of the table. And I'm just going to see if there's an opportunity to engage into a conversation. So I think it can be better. I think that has been said, or it can be said at any time throughout the annals of history. But where are you at? That's what I like to say, right? Where are you at when it comes to sharing the gospel? Are you further along today than you were last month, right? Because it's easy to compare ourselves amongst ourselves. Well, I want to be like the next Ray Comfort. No, don't be the next Ray Comfort. Be the first you. Where are you at when it comes to handing out tracts or engaging in conversation? That's where we
Boy,
need.
how many people would love to have that kind of environment to be fostered in, and to actually get that kind of training, hanging out, and boy, I guess that's true. You guys could be somebody that creates that environment in your church. You could be the friend that is doing that and encouraging other friends to go out and evangelize. That is awesome. Mark, you should write a book about this, man. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, I did write a book with Kurt Cameron and Ray Comfort called The School of Biblical Evangelism. But you know what we should have is we should have some sort of like a summit evangelistic conference in Florida where people can come and attend, where you could speak, I could speak, maybe John Harris from Europe. He could come and
Love
speak.
John Harris. He's amazing.
He is.
Let's do it. You would do that. You'd come here to Florida. You would leave your beautiful state of California and come to the state of Florida. You'd do
If you
that.
organize it, Eric, I will come. Build it and I will come.
Wow. Ladies, we're doing an evangelism conference. I'll find it. I'll book it. I'll get it all figured out, man. We will launch an evangelism conference right here. If you're serious about it, we'll do that right here in Florida.
Let's do it.
Can you write a book for this thing as well?
I probably could.
I took the liberty of coming up with a few title ideas for you. Just let me know which one piques your interest. I've got No More Excuses, Overcoming Barriers to Bold Evangelism. And by the way, hey, if you guys like these out there, you guys can maybe vote on, just comment on what you think Mark ought to write next, okay? I thought that was good. Good. Based on real conversations, by the way. That's what that book's got to be. I got another idea here. One step ahead, because Mark, when I watch you evangelize, you are always one step ahead of wherever anybody is going. You know where they're going, you know what they're going to say, and you're one step ahead. The strategy for evangelism, or maybe you should do say what to say when you don't know what to say. Mark, that's you right there. You're gold. You're never at a loss for words. Kind of small title there, but blurry. How to hear well done. Because that's what we want, right? At the end of the day, How to Hear Well Done by Mark Spence. 3 more here. Oh, take someone with you. I was like, this would be a good title for Mark Spence. Like, don't we want to take somebody to heaven? Like, why leave somebody behind? Take somebody with you to heaven. 2 more. Not my favorite, but coffee and conversations, how to effectively witness to the lost. Maybe that's it, you know? And then asking the magic questions. That was a terrible title. But anyway, we'll throw those last two out. You guys vote on it. Which book should Mark write? Did any of those stand out to you, Mark? You know which one you're going to write?
I like most of them, but we should co-author that book.
You do the work. I'll put my name on it, and you got a deal, buddy. I love it.
I'll be happy to do the work.
I would co-author a book with you in a heartbeat. I've got people here that do the work for me too. So I'll have my people get a hold of your people. Well, let's talk about this. How do we stay one step ahead? Like when it comes to conversations about evangelism, like what it would have to start with, like the objections to evangelism. What's the biggest objection that you see to evangelism right now that people try to use?
Well, the number one objection that I get out on the streets is if God is a God of love, if he truly cares about what's happening, why is there evil and why is there suffering inside the world? And when this question is asked, it could either be one of two ways, right? It could be an emotional charge, you know, like maybe they're going through something or they've gone through something. For example, I was talking to a young lady at Long Beach State who, when I was all done debating a professor, she asked the question. She wanted a little bit more inside information concerning this. And she said, listen, why do the innocent suffer? I'm just curious. And I try to maintain what I normally do, which is answer a question with a question. It's called the Socratic method, right? Greg Bahnsen was very smart at doing this. He was a professor at USC, and he utilized the Socratic method into the ground so well so that one of his students asked him the question, why do you always answer our questions with a question? And his response was, well, why not? Answering her question with a question, it causes critical thinking. Of all the questions that you could ask, you chose that question. Why did you choose that question? When I was talking to the student, she said, well, I'm 29 years old. I have cancer. Both my parents are dead. I have no siblings. I have no boyfriend. And when I die, my name dies with me. So for her, it was an emotional question. She did not want me to go off on the ontological argument for the existence of God or the cosmological argument for whatever those even are. She wanted to know the meaning of life and if there's nothing that happens after this life, why am I living such a short amount of time? So I looked at her and I said, look, I think you're asking the wrong question. It's not why, God, is this happening to me? Or where are you, God, when bad things happen to good people? But it's, God, how kind are you to remind me that I have an appointment with death? When 350,000 people die every day, that's 150,000 people that we see and 200,000 preborn babies inside the womb that die every day. Most of these people are planning for tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes knocking. How kind is God to stamp eternity on your eyelids, that whether you're awake or asleep, you have this revelation. I am about to die. Where's God? What is the meaning of life? And what's going to happen to me when I die? And she looked at me and she's all, wow, you've given me a lot to think about. Now, it's much different from a skeptic who comes along and says, why do bad things happen to good people? Or where's God when the innocent suffer? And for that, I perhaps would use a presuppositional approach to challenge them. Now, when somebody asks me a question, I want to just answer the question. I believe that Christianity is intelligent. But when they put God on trial, I change my method of answering from evidence to presuppositional apologetics, and I challenge their worldview when that happens. But all the while, I'm just trying to get to the gospel because it's the power of God unto salvation.
Guys, are you taking notes here? If you go, you will grow. That's the first thing. I like that. Did you make that up or did you hear that from somebody else, Mark? Because that was really good.
I don't think it was very deep, but
it's so true. I feel like most young people that walk away from the faith, I'm like, if your youth group went out and did evangelism, you would have grown in your faith and been able to answer questions, and your youth pastor would have had to answer questions that you won't hear normal Sunday school answers to, and that would have caused you to grow, and I don't know, maybe you wouldn't have walked away. So
no, that's so true. I remember hearing Hank Hanegraaff saying before he became the Bible Answer Man and before he apostatized, went to the Catholic Church, but I heard him say when he got saved, he immediately began to go out and share his Christian worldview. And he said, hey, look, team, when somebody asks you a question and you don't have an answer for it, come and get me. not because I have all the answers, but I want to hear the questions that are being asked. And then he'd go back and he would try to prepare for that question as if he was going to be asked that question in the near future.
Well, this is something, if you guys don't know Mark, he is great at writing those and logging those questions down. If he goes somewhere and speaks, has students write questions, he keeps a list of those things and actually has people help answer those. And really is that kind of what started the livingwaters.tv? You guys just answering questions, isn't that kind of what
it is?
got that?
Yeah, it really is. Living Waters Equip is a branch of Living Waters TV, so livingwaters.tv. And we were bringing in the top of professors, theologians, pastors who can answer on a street level questions that they get out on the street. Why the Bible, not the Bhagavad Gita? Give me a 2-minute answer, right? And so as we begin to bring in these different people, they begin to answer these questions, and then we realized that we had something much bigger than what we had imagined. So we have in the queue, I think, 700 more questions answered, videos ready to go on that branch of Living Waters TV called Living Waters Equip.
And we're talking people like Vodi Bakum all the way to Frank Turek. You got all kinds of people on there answering questions.
That's right. Are you on there?
I'm on there. I subscribed. What is it, $75? I am in, man.
No, did I interview you for Living Waters Equip? I don't even remember.
You've been so generous with your time to me. If we're really going to do this conference, this summit, then absolutely, I would love to be interviewed on Living Waters Equip.
That'd be cool.
I feel like you give better answers. Are you going to go with my specialty? Are we going to talk about dinosaurs or something like that?
Boy, that would be true. We had Ken Ham on, and he just recently.
He does an okay job of talking about dinosaurs.
Yeah,
when he was there, when they were alive, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, he's 9 days older than dirt.
All right, well, let's talk strategy here for a second. Yes, I'd love to be a part of Living Waters Equip. That would be amazing. Man, how much prep would I have to do for that? I want the questions ahead of time, okay? If I got to get them down to 2-minute answers. Hey, let's talk strategy here. You just talked about the difference between evangelism and defending the faith, more like when you're sharing versus defending, two different approaches. You talked about the Socratic method. Can we get into some of the details, like when you're debating somebody and you can't seem to get anywhere? Do you have a thought or a question or a strategy that comes to mind when you're dealing with somebody and you're like, I don't think this is getting anywhere. I don't think I'm actually making progress here. Or they keep repeating the same thing over and over and over. What goes through your mind?
I have a list of 6 questions. Maybe we can get into that during the last hour of this this interview here. But yeah, we have to start with a presupposition, right? I understand that they have presuppositions. I tell them from the beginning, I have presuppositions. I presuppose that the Word of God, the Bible, is God's Word. It is the actual Word of God. And I also understand that they don't believe that. So when I engage into a conversation, when they ask me a question, it makes sense for me to use the Bible as my ultimate source of authority. Let me give you my answer from the Bible. I'm a Christian. That only makes sense. What are you going to use to answer the questions that I give to you? And what do they say? Well, I'm going to use science, reasoning, common sense, things of that nature. And I might say, well, this should be a great conversation. My name is Mark, by the way. Let's keep this cordial if possible. I'm not going to raise my voice. Maybe you can do the same. But let's stay consistent as we begin to talk. Stay consistent within your worldview. You want to use common sense and logic. I will do the best I possibly can using the Bible. But every time they ask a question, I don't give them the ability to ask a second question until I've asked a question. Because that's the way a conversation works. Otherwise, it's a monologue, right? Let's have a dialogue. You ask a question, I will do my best to answer it. And then now I'm going to ask a question. You do your best to answer it as well. But we have to remember that when we evangelize, evangelism will naturally move into a realm of apologetics where you defend what you believe. Greg Bahnsen, the presuppositionalist, he said, the apologist who fails to get to the gospel is cruel and proud. He's cruel because he's failing to give his opponent what he needs the most, which is the gospel. And he's proud because he's more interested in coming across as an intellectual elitist than to demonstrate that all glory and honor belongs to Jesus Christ. We go to debates, we watch debates, and what are we looking for, Eric? We're looking for my side to sweep the floor with your side. We walk away saying, my side won. That's what we're looking for. And that's shameful. Honestly, I remember when Ken Ham had debated Bill Nye, the not-so-science guy, and he had asked the question, who do you think is going to win the debate? And I said, I think whoever shares the gospel is going to win the debate. And I'm not expecting too much from Bill Nye. Share the gospel and you're going to win, because it's the gospel that is the power of God unto salvation. So let's go back and forth one at a time. I try to maybe lay a framework, and that's what I'll do in the latter part of this hour. These 6 loaded questions. In fact, I went on our podcast and I laid out these 6 questions, and I said, hey, look, these are the questions that I'm going to ask Bill Nye, because I was due to speak at the Creation Science Museum down in Santee, California. I got a phone call from the curator saying, hey, Bill Nye's going to show up and he wants to challenge you concerning the age of the earth and dinosaurs. Are you up to it? And I said, sure. I laid out these 6 questions on our podcast that I'm going to ask him, and he never showed up. I don't know why he didn't show up. I want to believe that he didn't show up because he thought these questions were so powerful, and these questions got back to him, and there were no answers for it, that he was just left in a quagmire. But it was packed out with atheists. There were 2 overflow rooms, and then we filmed it ourselves. We haven't done anything with the footage, and I just answered questions from the atheists to the best of my ability. And I don't have all of the answers to the questions that are being asked. Sometimes they're pretty similar questions that I might hear on the regular, but I think that framework is very important.
To the average person who says, well, Mark, I mean, this is your job. You're supposed to be good at debating. You're supposed to be good at going out there on the street. You know, I'm not an extrovert. I mean, to say I'm only going to let you ask one question and then, oh, I got to ask a question. That takes a little bit of like extrovertedness to actually do that. And then how do I balance? Do you have to have do you have to have a good personality in order to make this happen? Like, what do you got to do? Who do you have to be? Who do you need to become in order to actually fulfill this obligation of sharing the gospel?
Well, you need to care about the lost. And if you have no concern for others to be saved, Spurgeon said, well, then you're not saved yourself. Right? So I think it just starts with some sympathy and empathy, because at one point you were in their shoes. When you got saved, whoever you are, was it some strong apologetical question that was holding you back? You said, well, nobody can answer that question. If somebody answers that question, well, then I'll become a Christian. I dare to say that you were just in your sin. You were in darkness. You were darkness. You loved darkness. And then one time, God invaded your time and space, and he saved you for reasons known only to him. And if that be the case, if it was the simplicity of the gospel that the Apostle Paul said that he was not ashamed of, well, then you don't need to be ashamed of either. Go out and begin to hand out gospel tracts. You know, drop them in different remote places. I think a great place to start conversations are at laundromats, right? People, they throw their clothes in there, and now they're just hanging out and they're reading a book, and they don't normally read. So they don't want to read anyways. Or they're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook. Just engage in conversation. Bring your clothes to the laundromat and throw them in, and as you wait, look around and try to engage in conversation. Say, you know what? Man, laundromats, interesting place, aren't they? You know, you meet all kinds of interesting people, you know, as we clean our clothes. Has your soul been washed in the blood of the Lamb? No, don't say
Exactly.
that.
How do you make that transition? Yes, I can see Ray, by the way, already doing a special at laundromats. I can totally see the next movie being something like that.
Yeah, just engage in a conversation. And what I would do, right, have some gospel tracts with you and just say, hey, you know, it's good to meet you. My name is Mark. You come to the laundromat often. Hey, you know, I don't. This isn't a place where I typically go, perhaps. You say, you know, I've been given some thought concerning what happens to people after they die. You know, recently I had my mother pass. I was wondering, do you have any thoughts on that? I think that maybe we should. Like, it seems like an important thing that 10 out of 10 of us are going to die. We're all part of the ultimate statistic. You know, I don't want to spook you out or freak you out. It's just something I've been thinking through, and I was wondering, you know, where do you place your hope? What do you think happens after we die? Can you help me out? Help me to figure out what you believe. And then maybe I can share what I believe. And if they say, I don't want to talk about this, go, hey, no problem. Then move to somebody else. You know, whatever. Don't overthink it, because that's what we do. We overthink it, and then we talk ourselves out of it. We have our marching orders. God uses the gospel to save people. That's a person. Share it and leave the results to God.
You mentioned that I guess when you were talking about not getting upset in a conversation and telling the person, I'm not going to get upset. It's almost like I felt like there's a pre-evangelism, then there's an evangelism, then there's a post-evangelism. It is because I've heard some people give some incredible pre-evangelism ideas, like, hey, I forget how I'm trying to remember how they say it now. But if I prove this to you, would you change your mind? Or if I do this, basically setting them up ahead of time with some questions where they're wanting to sound, hey, are you open-minded? Are you open-minded to this? And then when later on in the conversation, they close their mind on something, you can say, but I thought you said you were open-minded. So pre-evangelism, you're not going to get upset. How do you do, is there any advice on pre-evangelism before you get to the evangelism?
Yeah, there's a couple questions that I might ask, right? If I could answer all of your questions to your satisfaction, to where you say, that's a great answer to my question. I never thought about it like that. But if I could answer all of your questions to your satisfaction, are you willing to bow your knee, confess Jesus Christ as Lord, and become a Christian today? And if they say no, I say, well, then why ask the questions? Why pretend like these objections or a lack of evidence is what is holding you back from becoming a Christian? Or as Easy says here at Living Waters, he'll say, look, I respect your belief. You're an atheist, you're a Mormon, part of the Baha'i faith. Listen, I respect you as an individual. You're created in the image of God. You're worthy of dignity, honor, and respect. Would you consider yourself to be an open-minded individual? Would you say that you yourself respect what other people believe? And when they say, yes, no, I respect what other people believe, the moment he senses any sort of hostility, he'll say, hey, I just want to thank you for having this conversation with me and respecting what I believe. And I'm excited to learn more about what you believe as well. And it tends to take things down a little bit. It removes that amygdala hijack that might be happening when they are yelling or cussing or getting upset. We can have two people who disagree vehemently and then go their way and have a cup of coffee. I have a lot of friends that are non-Christians. We agree to disagree, we go our way. So I think that we could have more conversations like that. When I was in London recently, I had a whole group of atheists who were so angry with me, as I was opening up preaching, and I said, why are you so upset? You obviously don't believe what I believe. You think what I believe is equating to that of pink unicorns. But let's just have a rational conversation. Let's take it down to a conversational tone. I want to know what you believe and why you believe what you believe. Fair enough? You go first. And then they go. So,
man, how many conversations go well and how many don't for you? I'm curious. I'm thinking about mine and I'm trying to put a percentage on it. I don't know that I could. I guess if I had to put a percentage, I'd say 10% of my conversations, I'm like, that was an amazing, it's one of those, I want to tell that story. I got to go tell somebody about this guy I just talked to or this lady I just talked to. And probably about 50% would be, that was pretty good. I at least got to it. I got to the gospel. Do you think through or do you go, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going and whatever God does with it, I was obedient.
Yeah, an evangelist was once asked the question, how many people have you led to the Lord? And his response was, all of them. And what God has done with them up until that point, it's up to him, right? So we are called to plant and to water, but God brings the increase. We are looking for some huge fruit from a conversation, and God isn't looking for us to be fruitful. He's calling us to be faithful. And if we are faithful with the message, well, then God will be faithful to bring forth fruit in his timing and in his way. We want to plant the seed, water the seed, and we want to see instant fruit. We want to see and go back to our peeps and say, look, this person got born again. And obviously that would be amazing. But isn't it okay for somebody to come along after you and to water the seed that you planted, or for you to water the seed that somebody else had planted? So how many success stories do I have? I want to say almost all of them. They're all successful because I'm faithful with the message. Now, occasionally, let me share with you an unfruitful experience. Not too long ago, I had a guy come to me and he said, hey, Mark, will you take me out and do some one-on-one evangelism? And I said, yeah, absolutely. We went to a local area here by Disneyland. I found out that this guy that I'm talking to just got his degree in philosophy. And that tickled my intellect. And that tickled my curiosity, and I was so excited to talk to him because I love philosophy. I love engaging in a conversation and seeing exactly how much they know and demonstrating how much they really don't know. So I put him inside of a philosophical pretzel within about 60 seconds, demonstrating that his degree and however many thousands of dollars he spent on that is of no use. Well, the guy that I was with, he started tapping on my elbow, and he goes, "When are you going to get to the gospel?" And I go, just a moment. And I continued tickling the intellect and just putting him in this pretzel. And it was to my shame. When we walked away, he looked at me and he goes, "So, is that how you do it?" And I was embarrassed because that's not how you do it, right? We can win an argument and we can lose their soul. That guy didn't walk away saying, "Man, that Christian cares about me." He's relinquished his evening with his wife and his kids to come and talk to me because he really cares that when I die, I might go to hell. No, he walked away saying, "Man, that guy's super smart. I'm just going to be studied up next time I come across somebody who is smart so I can beat them." Man, that's terrible. That was not a successful encounter, to my shame. So I want to have them ask a question. I ask a question, they answer it, I answer it, but ultimately I'm attempting to get to the gospel. And if I don't get to the gospel, I think that becomes a failure. So it's a success if you get to the gospel.
I want to ask you more about just how to answer every argument, knowing that, man, conversations could go any different direction. But hey, social media, I got to let you guys go. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to seeing you next Wednesday as we tackle more conversations about science and scripture and see how God's word and God's world absolutely go together. It's really incredible. Before next Wednesday, when I get to see you again, can I encourage you to do a couple things? Number one, go to livingwaters.tv. If you want to learn how to share your faith better, it helped me tremendously to watch Witnessing Encounters, and they post tons of witnessing encounters. You got livingwaters.tv, you got livingwaters.com, you got the Living Waters YouTube, probably YouTube, Facebook. You guys are on all the social media platforms. Just look up Living Waters. You need to follow Mark Spence as well, just at Mark Spence on all the different platforms. He's always posting things that will challenge your thinking and challenge you to see God for who he really is. And that's one thing that I love about you, Mark. You're always focused on who God is. And when you see God for who he is, we become like Isaiah. When God's high and lifted up, it's like, okay, here am I, send me. I'll do whatever you say, God. I'll go share your truth with the world. So make sure and follow Mark so that you can be encouraged as he shares his story and on his timeline. Wow, I wish you guys could just come on over. Matter of fact, just do that. Come to creationtoday.org, partner with us to reach more people and hear the rest of this conversation. Tracks as well. Mark, how many different gospel tracks do you guys have on your website right now that people can order?
I'm going to guess and say we have about 65 different gospel tracks.
Amazing. Guys, use those, order those. It is so much easier to share the gospel when you've got something with you and you can just say, "Hey, can I buy your coffee?" Or, "Hey, did you get one of these?" Or, "Hey, did you see this?" Makes it so much easier. The Bible says a man's gift makes room for him. So Ray and Living Waters have done an incredible job. And you guys use this is what you guys use, right? This isn't just we make something and try to put it out there. These are things that you guys are using every day in evangelism.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're about ready to get into the basic framework to establishing a conversation that thousands of people have used this framework that I've come up with, and I can't wait to go through it with you here in this latter part of the hour here.
Wow. Well, guys, I'd love you to join the rest of this. Make sure you subscribe, and between now and next Wednesday, go share the gospel with somebody who needs to hear it. Put these things into practice. If you go, you're going to grow. I look forward to seeing you next week.